I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Who do we think we are? And when was it that we decided to become aware of ourselves? And how does that awareness benefit us? Do you remember your first point of self-awareness? That moment when you realized your being separateness from the rest of the world? The moment when you became aware of your selfness, your inner dialogue turning on in whatever capacity a seed begins to sprout? That split second when you realized that the world was exterior to you and that it wasn't going to bend for you, that you were merely a mind walking around amongst other separate minds, all going in the direction of a thought. I remember bits of foggy images, misting moments of small world that expanded via a crack of light. It was coming in from between the threshold and the bottom of the screen door. A square of worn linoleum staged a spot for wet shoes in the entryway. I pressed my cheek against the embossed texture of smooth brick, almost flat now. A circle of filtered sun raised itself to my face so that I could smell it as I watched the bits of dust and old mud dance silhouetted softly in the rays of white light bouncing between us. I remember numbness. I remember turning off. I remember the whole world changing and that crack of light being the savior I was seeking. Surely it would expand soon. At any moment, the door would open and the planet would go back to spinning. In an instant, my own light would turn back on. But the door never opened, and the circle of warmth that held me shrank cold as the earth turned past the railing on the deck. The linoleum was just linoleum. It would have never been the bricks it had been engineered to pose as. Just a square for wet shoes and tears. Save the carpet. Save your heart. From then on, I was apart. The journey of self begins. There are different versions of this story. There's the one with the pilgrimage to find God. Maybe God sent you on a mission. There's the one where a hero saves someone who needs saving. Maybe rescues a damsel in distress. Maybe the hero is the damsel in distress. Which leads us to the fool's journey, a journey of self-discovery through mishap and reflection. Sometimes it's all of the above, and it can get intense. Any of these versions will lead the traveler to some sort of enlightenment, if the traveler chooses to travel. Joseph Campbell said, "We must reclaim the visionary, the utopian, the dream of the better or happier world. These are not childish or lies. They are the transcendence of men, the loss, the hurts, realization of mortality we all face, and then celebrate the present life moment also." How do we do that? When was it that we decided to become aware of ourselves, of others, of our place within the context? What was the discovery toward the understanding of human self? What is the fool's journey? Are we on it? The simplest way to figure out where you are is to consider your surroundings. We have to do this, or we'll die. We might walk into traffic or stumble over an object in our path. If it was prehistoric times, we might starve to death, get eaten by a predator, or succumb to the elements. In these considerations, patterns will emerge. These are helpful. They outline our paths. From the very beginning, some patterns were obvious, night and day, the seasons, migrations of animals, and changes of the weather. Understanding these patterns allowed humanity to develop into what it has become today. With each new level of wisdom, we're able to simultaneously progress as a species and dig deeper into ourselves as a culture. Back in the 16th century BC, the Babylonians noticed patterns in the sky aligning with patterns on the ground. They noticed that when the stars and planets held certain positions, they were reflected by occurrences on the earth and with humans themselves. They started tracking the moments of the celestial bodies and were able to make social predictions based on their correlations. This is what's known as mundane astrology. It was, as far as we know at the moment, the first attempt at understanding human behavior. made possible only because enough natural patterns had been mastered through observation to build a sustainable foundation for survival. As each human survival necessity was conquered, the attention toward that necessity could shift, and redirection of focus would blossom new things, new questions, and even more patterns to observe. Over and over, gaining mass and speed. Wash, rinse, and repeat. Now, we had time to look at ourselves. This is where the fool's journey begins. Whether or not he is to become a hero remains to be seen. By the 4th century BC, the science of astrology had been refined to the point of the summation and predictions of individuals' life paths. This is natal astrology, and is what we still base our charts on in Western astrology today. This was the highest form of human understanding of self known for thousands of years. Here, I will be referring to this specific lineage of astrology, but astrology is everywhere. There is not a single culture on the planet who does not have some form of astrological association, myths, or science. It was so important that no decision was made without its consultation. Hippocrates even said, "A physician without the knowledge of astrology has no right to call himself a physician." He said this because he understood that all people are different, so each must be considered as the individual that they are. It is more important, he said, to know what sort of person has a disease than to know what sort of a disease a person has. Now, I understand that astrology of late has gotten a pretty bad reputation this century. People don't really believe it anymore. But if we think about what William Shakespeare said, reputation is an idol, and most false imposition, often got without merit and lost without deserving. My point here isn't to educate you on the significance of astrology. I'll save that for a different video. My point is that it is a very natural occurrence of human curiosity to discover what lies within himself. And astrology was humanity's main attempt at that from forever up until now. And if it didn't mean anything, that wouldn't mean anything. So that brings us to present day and our present day understanding of psychology. And how do we understand ourselves? There's the Freudian way. Lay down on the couch. Tell me about your mother. Read Oedipus Rex too many times. Believes a man should not strive to eliminate his complexes, but to get into accord with them. They are legitimately what directs his conduct in the world. Well, that's a great start, doctor. But then what do? Mom's not to blame for everything. If we get in touch with all this stuff and don't address it further, it surely will direct our conduct in the world, and that can get pretty messy. How do we master our complexes for the greater good? Again, Shakespeare, the fault, dear Brutus, is not in the stars, but in ourselves. Carl Jung, a student of Freud, thought that the wisdom held within the science of ancient astrology was the key to unlocking our greatest potentials. He said, "As far as we can discern from the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light of meaning in the darkness of mere being." He said, "My evenings are taken up very largely with astrology. I make horoscopic calculations in order to find a clue to the core of psychological truth." Jung even wrote to Freud about this in a letter in 1911. "I dare say that we shall one day discover in astrology a good deal of knowledge that has been intuitively projected into the heavens. For instance, it appears the signs of the zodiac are character pictures. In other words, libido symbols which depict typical qualities of the libido at any given moment. Now, for all intents and purposes here, instead of using libido, let's say drive. Typical qualities of a drive given at any moment. Characters. Characters described as archetype. There are 12 archetypes. There are 12 zodiacal symbols, each some aspect within us, each playing out its role in a story designed to enlighten us. Archetypes can be expressed in myths, dreams, folklore, religion, fantasies, or even literature. And they can be broken down simply as one is a template for the other. Jung says, astrology is one of the intuitive methods like the I Ching, geomantics, and other divinatory procedures. It is based upon the synchronicity principle, i.e., meaningful coincidence. Astrology is a naively projected psychology in which the different attitudes and temperaments of man are represented as gods and identified with the planets and the zodiacal constellations. We are born at any given moment in a place, and like vintage years of wine, have qualities of that year and the season of which we are born. Astrology does not lay claim to anything more. Daniel Rudyard said, astrology is a language, and if you understand this language, the sky speaks to you. Using the archetypes as a tool for understanding ourselves gives us the ability to embody an assortment of roles as an assortment of characters. We are the seekers who become the warrior, the orphans who become the caregivers, the destroyers, creators, the fools and sages. We go on many journeys. We conquer many a foe. We create our own worlds to rule or destroy. Joseph Campbell studied cultures and stories from the indigenous peoples who have survived to the present day. Campbell refined his own version of the archetypes and developed an idea of the hero's journey. It is the plot of every story ever told in one way or another. We cannot escape it. It plays itself out daily in our own lives. Internal or external, we are all hero fighting some dreaded beast. As Campbell reminds us, it is only when the man tames his own demons that he becomes the king of himself, if not the world. He says, every religion is true in one way or another. It is true when understood metaphorically, but when it gets stuck in its own metaphors, interpreting them as facts, then you're in trouble. I can't speak directly for Campbell, but what I get from what he's saying is that it is our responsibility to inject ourselves into the stories as if we are the characters themselves and play out the struggles as we would, so that we may learn from the experience the story presents us, knowing that the same lessons are applicable in our real waking lives. The stories are tools for self-discovery and growth. He said, myths are the world's dreams. They are archetypal dreams and deal with great human problems. Myths and dream come from the same place. They come from realizations of some kind that have to find expression in symbolic form. Now, it's easy to dismiss a lesson in a friend's story. They were clearly stupid because they are them, and I, being me, would never falter at such a hand because of my superior intellect, right? I mean, it's easier to identify with an anonymous fictional character who would never judge you, so you don't have to judge them as harshly to save your ego. Typical. It's why the latter method is so much more impactful. Don't worry, it's not just you, it's the way humans are built. And aren't you glad that so many other humans have already spent so much time figuring it out? It seems like it would be some kind of stupid to dismiss these treasure troves of wisdom of our experience. I mean, life might be easier if we start listening to these stories in a different way. Back to Jung real quick. Astrology is assured of recognition from psychology without further restrictions because astrology represents the summation of all psychological knowledge of antiquity. This statement is as true today as it will be any day it is said, because these traits are inherently born in us. It is our job to figure out what role each character is playing within us and to write our story so that each aspect has the ability to grow us as individuals for the betterment of humanity. Each journey is as individual as the person embarking on it. It's good to know which way your spirit wants to go. Campbell tells us, you enter the forest at the darkest point where there is no path. Where there is a way or path, it's someone else's way. You're not on your own path. If you follow someone else's way, you are not going to realize your potential. So you ask, if there is only darkness, and the path hasn't been paved yet, how will I know which way to go? And his answer to that is simple. Follow your bliss. If you do follow your bliss, you put yourself on the kind of track that has been there for you all the while, waiting for you. And the life that you ought to be living is the one you are living. Follow your bliss, and don't be afraid. And doors will open for you where you didn't even know you were going to be. So I can't tell you if the answers are in the stars, or if the answers are within yourself. But I can tell you that I'm on a journey to find out.